Good evening. This Town of Adams Board of Selectmen meeting on Wednesday, December 20th, 2023 is now called to order. If you could all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Madam Chairman, before we start the pledge, may I ask if we can entertain a moment of silence in remembrance of a retired police officer, Keith Erdesky, who recently passed away?
Certainly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I pledge
Pledge
allegiance
allegiance
to the flag of the United States
of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Right. The board has in front of them 3 sets of minutes for approval. We have Monday, November 20th, I believe, Thursday, November 30th, and then Wednesday, December 6th.
I'll make a motion the board waive a reading of the minutes and approve them as provided for November 20th, 2023.
I have a motion by Rick. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by John. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Or an abstention?
Abstain.
An abstention. Okay.
I'll make a motion the board waive a reading of the minutes and approve them as provided for November 30th and December 6th, 2023.
I have a motion by Rick. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Howard. Any discussion?
Yeah, I just have, it's difficult for me to read these because I get them so late, but I just was going through something quickly, and for November 30th, the second page, the last paragraph, member Novak, it should be the captain of the ship has not been around instead of the captain of the shift, because that was my quote. I didn't say shift. I was talking about their leader, Sean Sanderson. So it wasn't the shift, it was the ship.
Okay. So correction on page 2, last paragraph for November 30th. Any other discussion?
Also for November 30th, the last page, it appears there's 2 motions to adjourn. I don't know if that's a cut and paste or... I think the second one shouldn't be there.
Yes, I'm happy to rewatch that recording, make sure I get the right one, and I'll correct them accordingly.
Yeah, it shouldn't be the second one because John was gone for that.
Right. Yeah, so it would have been the first one.
Okay. Sorry, I was just reading through. I know that we had an executive session in there somewhere, and I was just wondering if that was, but it's
That's
not.
what my thought was,
Yeah,
too.
okay. So it would be removing that second paragraph on adjournment on the last page for the November 30th minutes. Okay. Any other discussion on November 30th or December 6th? If not, Rick, would you amend your motion to accept those changes?
So amended.
And Howard, would you second that?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on the amended minutes? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, great, thank you very much. Anyone here to talk under public comment? I was giving you the opportunity, but I didn't think so. Okay. Then we'll move on to new business, which item A, the town clerk is here to talk about. So the board may remember, we talked about a proposed dog kennel license in early November, and said we would bring it back for approval to the full board in December, and that's where we are now. I think We've had the materials for 6 to 8 weeks, and nothing has changed since the initial proposal, but Madam Clerk, if you wanted to walk through it.
So this is a proposed kennel license application. I guess the biggest thing for the Board of Selectmen tonight is to decide on the fee. Proposed in the application is for 10 dogs for a kennel would be $100, 20 would be $200, 30 would be $300, and anything over 30 dogs at a kennel would be $10 per dog. 10 dogs or less, I should say, would be $100, up to 20 would be $200, up to 30 would be $300, and then any dogs thereafter would be $10 per dog, which basically equals out to $10 a dog in reality.
And then remind us that the cycle for the kennel license is the same as a dog license?
Correct,
So
so it'll run from
April-
April 1st to March 31st.
And you were looking to have this information in place in January when that
Correct.
licensing information goes out with the town census?
Yes.
Okay.
And this is specific, we do have a multi-dog license also. That's for people who have multiple dogs within their home. So we do have a few that we issue for that, but this is specifically if you're running a kennel, similar to what someone had just recently gone to the Zoning Board of Appeals for. We currently do not have anybody that's running a kennel here in town that we license. Any questions?
Other than the cost of the animal control officer inspecting the kennel, are there any other costs the town will incur from having a kennel in town?
It's typically going to fall to the animal control officer that would have to go in and do the inspection. But certainly if there's any complaints or anything like that, then it would go to code enforcement or the building department. Or if there's anything else that happens, especially if they've gone to the zoning board, it could, trigger the building inspector to go and make sure that they're in compliance.
Okay.
So it's really to help cover the cost of that and the cost of the actual license, which the dog tags aren't that expensive, so. Paperwork, but staff.
If I could just
Sure,
ask a quick question. You just mentioned that the individual that went through the zoning board of appeals, I see that Stanley's Lumber is for sale. Are they still going forward with that? Do you know?
I am not able to answer that.
Okay, thank you.
So this went through the zoning board of appeals. What zone can a kennel be located in the town?
I'd have to look at the zoning board for that. This
Okay.
isn't necessarily, this was brought on more for the fact that we did have somebody that had an interest in applying for a kennel license. So that triggered the fact that we, as the town of Adams, don't necessarily have a kennel license application, nor do we have a fee attached to a kennel license. So this is in preparation for somebody who actually does follow through with getting a kennel license, whether it's whether they have to go to the zoning board or not. If they're operating a business, they still have to come afterwards. Once they get all their approvals, this would be their final step to get a kennel license.
Okay, thank you.
So tonight, I'm really just pretty much looking for the fee that's attached to it.
Well, I think it's fair, so I'll make a motion to take a vote to allow the proposed amounts for kennel license for 2023, which are the following. $10 for 10 dogs or less, $100. 20 dogs or less, $200. 30 dogs or less, $300. And any number of dogs over 30, it'd be $10 per dog, extra dog.
I have a motion by Joe. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Howard. Any discussion?
Can I just,
Yes?
Joe, I think you said for 2023. Can you make it for 2024?
Okay, well, it's 2023 and, okay,
It was
so.
right, because I presented this back.
So I'll amend that to make the upcoming year being 2024.
Perfect, thank
And I'll
you.
second that.
And you'll second, okay. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed or abstention? All right.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thanks, Haley. Item B, in your meeting materials, Bree put together a memo for the board. This is just follow-up. We had a compliance hearing regarding a dangerous dog on November 30th, I think. Nope, we did that the 15th, November 15th. The deadline was the 29th, my apologies. This is what happens when you're flying without notes. So we had the meeting with the dog owners on the 15th of November. We asked them to provide us with a number of materials. So in the memo, as a reminder to everybody, that we've made the following motions in regard to the dog Sully, who resides at 12 Phillips Hill. One, that there be installed on the property a minimum of a standard size kennel, minimum of 6 feet by 8 feet with a covering or secure top, as well as protection on the bottom, whether it be a fenced bottom or buried fencing, with the minimum of a plan in hand to the Board of Selectmen by November 20th and installed by December 21st. In the materials attached to the memo, you will see that there is a printout of a kennel kit that the dog owners were going to purchase, meeting the specifications, the size. I'll go through all of the items and then I'll open to the board for any questions. Item 2, that the owners provide the Board of Selectmen with documentation of obedience training, including an assessment of the dog relevant to the animal, including an adequate amount of training and a certificate of completion once the obedience class was concluded. In your materials, you'll see a printout of an email exchange with Mountain Dog Academy. Item number 3, that the credentials of the trainer and assessment of Sully be provided to the Board of Selectmen by November 29th. What we have is the printout of the email exchange from Mountain Dog Academy. Item 4, that proof of a scheduled appointment to have Sully neutered be provided to the Board of Selectmen by November 29th. We did not receive that. Item 5, that the person having ownership of Sully have a certificate of insurance for no less than $100,000 for personal injuries that may be caused by Sully be provided to the Board of Selectmen no later than November 29th. That is attached to the memo. At this point, what I want to do is just report back to the board the materials that have been provided to our office at this time. I wanted to report to the board that I did call district court on Monday and ask the clerk at district court if an appeal had been filed. They told me that there was not an appeal filed, so that was past the deadline in which they could have filed an appeal on any of our orders. So what I'm providing to the board this evening is information, and if the board wanted to take further action or want to discuss this with the dog owners further, we would have to post a public hearing. And what I would be asking the board this evening is if the board wanted to do that. Or if you felt this was sufficient, then it could be sufficient. But without the owners here, we really can't take any other action other than saying it is sufficient or asking for a public hearing to bring them in. But it was my responsibility to report back to the board what had been provided to date.
Yeah, I would just like to say it's very hard to ascertain through, just a picture of the kennel and some of the other things provided. Has Kim been staying involved with this?
I don't know.
Okay.
I can ask. I know that there was a deadline of December 21st for installation of the
right.
kennel. I was kind of waiting until after that.
Yeah.
But we haven't heard anything from Kim on her own, but I haven't asked.
Okay. because I think it's important for us to make sure that, we gave that a thorough going over and that the people involved in this should live up to our expectations. So that's just the comment. I don't feel right now, I don't know how much time we should give them because, the more time that goes by and things aren't done, it's a reflection of ourselves in some respects.
Yes. So there has been no proof of scheduled appointment to have them neutered, correct?
Correct.
All right. That's, and that's 29th, the 29th. So
Yes.
that's a violation.
Yep.
Okay, and you have one more day to get the kennel
Installed.
installed.
To piggyback a little
Sure.
bit on Howard's statements, it may be hard for them to get someone to do some neutering, but they should supply proof of us prior to the 29th that they were working on it, as they did with some of these items that we requested.
Yep. I will say that there was a conversation that was one of the items that they were looking to appeal in district court.
Yeah, right.
And why I called district
Yeah.
court to see if if they had filed an appeal, and they had not. I don't know if there's anything from John or Howard. I'm hearing a little bit from Joe and, I'm sorry, John and Rick. I'm hearing from Joe and Howard that it might be best to bring them back in and ask some follow-up questions.
I think it may be easier to have Kim just be the intermediary
Okay,
and avoid more bureaucracy.
sure.
Yeah, because it's very clear what we asked, to Joe's point, the expectation was set. They did not file an appeal, and if Kim could verify that,
Sure.
then we need to take the next steps.
So we can ask the animal control officer to report to us on January 3rd at our meeting as to what steps have been taken? Does that sound like what the board would like?
Would we need a motion for that? Or, excuse me, Rick, go ahead.
No, I don't think we would, in my opinion, need a motion for that because the chairman sets the agenda, so.
Yeah.
Okay. Then that's-
Good, I agree.
Everyone's good with that? So January 3rd? Okay, I have consensus? Okay, thank you.
Right. I just want to reinforce Joe's point that we can't let too much time go before we do something, because otherwise we look like it
Great.
doesn't. Right, we need to follow through on what we say.
Yeah, it's part of why we put it on the agenda tonight, and recognizing that that doesn't give enough time for the owners to necessarily be here. I didn't want
Got
to
it.
have it,
Okay, so
Yeah.
January 3rd, we can
yep.
take concrete action.
And we can let the owners know that we would also have the animal control officer here, which is the fair thing to do.
Very good.
Okay, great, thank you. All right. That'll bring us to item C, update on veteran service agent position, and I think it'll probably flow into D as well. The review and approve draft intermunicipal agreement for veteran services. So I'll state both agenda items in case you go back and forth between the two.
That's fine, yeah, thank you.
Jay, I'll turn it over to you.
So Steve Roy, who's been our longtime, about 10 years, I would say, veteran service agent for the city of North Adams, but also the district veteran service agent. For those that don't know, who may be watching at home, there is a veteran service district created. It was done back in the 2010, 2011 range, and it services most of us in northern Berkshire, Dalton, Lanesboro, Clarksburg, North Adams, Cheshire. Steve has decided to resign. It is the responsibility of the city of North Adams to take that resignation, post the position, hire for the position. They have done so. They have hired a gentleman by the name of Mitchell Keel. I don't know a lot about Mitchell. I met him very, very briefly yesterday for just a few moments. He was unavailable tonight to present himself to the board. So we anticipate having Mitchell at a meeting in January so you can get to see him. Folks at home can get to see him. So that is who will be the new Veterans Service Agent. The towns that are part of the district agreement which we'll talk about next, have decided to stay in it. Just for conversation's sake, this is a position the town of Adams does not have to hire for and does not have to carry a full salary for or a full benefit load for. The city of North Adams the person's an employee of the city, and then the town of Adams pays a percentage of the salary and a percentage of the benefits. That brings me to the documents that you have in front of you. I'll take the third one first, which is this letter. This was just a very convenient letter that was sent. We decided to put it in your packet because it just basically talks about the value of having a veteran service agent in your community. We are required to have one, just like an emergency management director. So that letter is just background for you folks to understand really what the role of the veteran service agent is and how the veteran service agent is able to access particular benefits specifically for veterans of the armed services. The other two documents go hand in hand. I do not have for you a final draft of the intermunicipal agreement that the city of North Adams will be asking us to sign. This was a version that was updated last summer and then was not finalized by the city and by the member towns. I do not expect it to change substantively in its final form. I do expect it sometime very early in January, probably after the holiday, from the city of North Adams, where we can sign it and participate with it. The board has a choice to just wait until we get the final draft, wait for another meeting, and then sign it there, or the board can authorize me to sign it as long as it does not substantively change beyond what you have in front of you. The Excel spreadsheet, talking dollars and cents, as long as the agreement does not substantively change, our share of the veteran service agent is an appropriated amount of $18,500. And you can see on the spreadsheet what every other community pays. The four largest communities, part of the district, North Adams, Williamstown, Dalton, and Dalton, the four of us pay percentages based on our population. The other communities, Clarksburg, Cheshire, Lanesboro, Savoy, and Florida, pay a flat $2,000. So that's the salary costs, the benefit costs. Also, the city also has a full-time administrative assistant at the Veteran Service Office at City Hall. So when folks call here looking for the Veteran Service, they're still served because we send them up to North Adams City Hall. And that would be Tina Sampson, so we pay a portion of Tina's benefits and salary as well. That's really the crux of the agreement. Town of Adams has to, budget for that, which is paid part of the IMA, and then we also budget, as you know, for the veterans' benefits, which is separate of this agreement. That has nothing to do with it. This is really just a personnel agreement for services delivered. That's my update, and that's the commentary about the intermunicipal agreement. I didn't get a sense from talking with the city that's going to change substantially. There's a few things that specifically specify, like, for example, for us, there's language in here that says the veteran service agent will have an office at Town Hall. We want to change that. We'd like to have the new veteran service agent work out of the Council on Aging building. It's a very similar service delivery model to Council on Aging. Our seniors, those who are eligible for those benefits, go to that building. They have access to Barbara, Sarah, and the rest of their staff. We'd like the new veteran service agent to be in that building as well. I feel that they can work in a far more collaborative manner in order to make sure that we get benefits that folks are eligible for to them if everyone's in that building. If folks are going over to that building and they're in need of service, there's other folks there that can help them. Steve's office is downstairs in the basement with the code enforcement officer and with the building inspector. There's no relevant to that. So that's the only change. So I wanted the city to change that out of here. I don't see the cost sharing changing or anything, but we can certainly wait or authorize me to sign it as long as it does not substantively change. If it does, I would bring it back for the board's approval. And as I said, the new veteran service agent has been hired. And we have funds appropriated, which can't change until July anyway, so.
Yeah, I'd just like to ask, the contractual agreement is, how long does that go for, just yearly? Or,
It's year over year, and I want to say that there's we have to give 60 days notice at within the fiscal year end to withdraw. That's on page 5, item 12.
so is Steve, who's resigned, is he on a salary?
Yes,
Okay, so the person coming in will just pick up his salary,
I believe so.
okay?
Yeah, that might be why they want to change the intermunicipal agreement to reflect
Okay.
maybe a higher salary.
Yeah.
If they did, but the city will run into a problem with that because we only have appropriated X amount of dollars based on what we'll just cross that bridge when we get to it.
That's all I have.
Jay, I think this is a 2-year agreement, if I read item number 12 correctly. That it's in effect for 2 years from the effective date or until terminated by the parties.
Okay. Oh, yeah, there it is. Agreement shall remain in effect for 2 years,
You do have the 60 days correct.
or until terminated.
Yep.
I have a general question. Has there been any feedback from the veterans in our community, how effective that service is?
No, it's been fairly quiet. You know, like anything else, I think if a person is told no, they tend to think that they didn't get decent service. But I can't say that there's been a gravy train of people complaining about Steve's services.
And I personally can tell you, I've actually benefited through Steve's services. So I would be on the plus side.
All right.
Yeah, and I have to say, I'm not a veteran, but I went down and to help a veteran, he was very accommodating. He looked into it, it didn't work out, but he looked into the situation, and I was appreciative of that.
Yeah, we thank Steve for his service. You know, he's not, I want to make it clear, he's not resigning in any way, shape, or form because the town of Adams didn't appreciate his service by any means.
Yeah.
He was responsive to me in any needs that I had, which were minimal. This is pretty much a self-explanatory position, doesn't require a lot of, when he needed me, he would reach out. And I just think that he, after 10 years of, in the position, he's just decided to move on. The agreement has expanded over the years. When Steve started, in talking with him, it's my understanding he did not have this many communities. So it's quite a bit. It's a big district. There's a lot of folks served in this district, so we thank him for his service to the town of Adams.
Yeah.
I have a couple questions. One, when is his effective last day?
This Friday, the 22nd.
22nd?
Yep.
Okay. And the second, are we moving the new agent right over to the council, or is that?
No, Sarah and staff have to clean out it's the old retirement board office, so they have sprawled into there, so they need to clean that out first, so probably not until January.
Okay.
His office hours, I believe, should stay the same, which are Tuesdays and Thursday mornings here.
I think.
No, he probably won't be starting much before January anyway.
He's due to start, I'm told by the city, he's due to start the last week of December, but that doesn't mean, and Steve was bringing him around this week, but,
I just would like to say, I think alluding to what Rick has said, that's gotta be made known, quickly, that there's a change in location. Because, that's not giving much time for people to know that the change is taking place.
yeah, no, he'll start in this building for sure.
Okay.
Does the board want to take any action in authorizing the town administrator to sign an agreement? Or would you like to see it back in front of the board when it's finalized?
I'll make a motion to authorize the town administrator to sign final intermunicipal agreement for veteran service with substantially the same term and conditions as provided for in the draft document.
I have a motion by Rick. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Howard. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed or an abstention? That is unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Jay, you've got item E, which is the approval of the reissue of the Adams Memorial Building RFP for housing development.
Yes, so in your packet tonight is a document you've already seen. This is the RFP for the redevelopment of 30 Columbia Street, known as the Memorial Building. About 2 years ago, we had two respondents to the same RFP. The first developer said it would take him about 18 months to develop his multi-million-dollar, what's called a capital stack. That is all the money that you need in order to execute the project. We've given him 20 months, and we've given him now about 24 months to do that. I should note before I go on that that is not uncommon with housing development in the Berkshires. We would all have loved to have seen dumpsters out there pretty quick with, clearing it and demolition and construction to start. But doing housing construction in the Berkshires is very expensive, and it's expensive particularly when it's market rate housing, because there is no financial incentive program for developers to build market rate housing in the Commonwealth. That is what is really debilitating for a community such as ours that has these housing opportunities, but a developer just can't get the money in order to make the project happen. So at this point, it's time to put it back out, see what's out there. I'm pleased to say that we have been getting some inquiries to see if the building is available. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to do the same project or the same scope, or be willing to accept the fact that portions of the building are not available for development. All that language is still in this agreement, in the RFP, just like it was the last time around. But, the Community Development Department and I, and Donna's been involved with this one because it was one of her projects while she's still here, it's time to put it out. And because we're getting inquiries, essentially let's go fishing and see what's out there. But I just caution everybody that, there hasn't been a line of people with a check that says I have my $10 million ready to go, and, just give me the building and I'll make it happen. We'll probably be in the same position next time around too, where you folks choose a developer, we'll have a review committee, then we'll put in front of the board those people who are qualified, who respond well to the RFP, and then there'll have to be a period of time, there through a development agreement to say how long they actually have to raise the money to do it. So are we back to square one? Yes, I guess so. But, the economic times change, and there have been some inquiries. So I don't think it's just takes longer to do these projects.
These people, they're professionals at what they do. What did we learn in their difficulty to raise capital? Because they've been at it. I just wondered what lessons learned, so we just don't repeat the same thing the next time.
Sure. Well, the lesson is that the town of Adams does not have any tools to contribute to housing development here in town. Some communities, such as Pittsfield, they have money that they can throw that. They have the GE Economic Development Fund. The city of Pittsfield could say, we'll take $250,000 out of that and give it to a housing developer. Now that closes a potential funding gap for them. We don't have that luxury in the town of Adams. City of Pittsfield, not to pick on our colleagues in Pittsfield, but they have more tools based on the policy of the Commonwealth. They are what's considered a gateway city. And what allows Pittsfield to have the housing projects that you see down there, you could take our exact properties that we have here in Adams, mills, churches, etc., that are prime property for housing redevelopment, place them in Pittsfield, and they would be redeveloped. Because as a gateway community, they can offer what's called a TIF, tax increment financing, to a developer, which means their tax liability, year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or up to 10 years, I believe they can go. There might be even more out there. Is an incentive for them to be able to know that they can put money into the property and they won't have that tax liability once they complete the property and it's higher assessed. We cannot do that here. We have no tools. We are very frustrated when a housing developer comes in, and I can name them to you. We have a closed church. We have Adams Memorial Building. We have 5 and 7 Hoosick Street, the former Waverly, Berkshire Hathaway properties. All Adams Ale House. We have ample properties here that could be redeveloped for housing. You saw what 20 East Street, what those folks were trying to go through to get that property going. We have plenty of properties, and that's really a key for us for economic development, is to convert these properties to market rate housing, or a beneficial mix of affordable housing and market rate housing to put people on the streets, generates commercial development, and vice versa. Jones Block is a prime example. There were 6 units that went in there. Within 30 days, those units were all leased up at market rate leases. So we know there's a market for it here, and people like Adams. It's a great community. We've been joke about this, but it's true. We're one of the last frontier of the Berkshires for development. So what did we learn from that is we have to work very hard with our regional colleagues with One Berkshire, the state-designated regional economic development team, and our elected officials to lobby the state to change that policy. And I'm pleased to report that we are making progress on it.
Okay.
I have been in touch with a gentleman by the name of Paul St. Pierre from Mass Office of Business Development. Paul's right on the cutting edge of this. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but we are trying to be creative and maybe test some of these rules and regulations with a test case out of Adams to submit for a TIF for a particular, property to see if it will be approved by the state. So we're in touch with him. We're in touch with former State Senator Ann Goby, who's the Rural Affairs Director for Governor Healy. We're in touch with her on this. We have had these conversations at the town managers meeting. We've had these conversations at other regional economic development conversations. So it's a live issue, is the best that I can tell you. Can I guarantee what Governor Healy or the legislature will do? No, I can't. I've had a conversation with Senator Mark about it, and I know Rep. Barrett's aware of it. So we're hoping that we'll get that, changed soon, because the properties are drying up in Pittsfield. But again, the last frontier is North Adams, Northern Berkshire with these housing projects. And, you can talk to Dave Carver. You can talk to some others. Those are the folks that are telling us that's what they need. And that's exactly what the chosen developer for Memorial needed and wasn't able to get for it. In fact, the developer who did Jones, he wants to do Carlo, which is the building on the other side of Firehouse Cafe, third floor, the former bowling alley, and the second floor commercial space. He has plans to convert that to housing, second and third floor, leave the first floor commercial. He's working on his capital stack now. Now, the difference is, it's privately owned. He bought that. Town has no ownership in it, no control over it. But when he meets with us to give us the update, he says, how can the town help me finance this? And that's where those conversations go.
Okay, so does this issue of the new RFP mean the existing developers will or will not be able to continue?
He will, if you vote tonight to reissue it, we're ready to put this out tomorrow and leave it open until approximately the end of February, which means we'd review it in March, and probably sometime, late March or April, we'd choose somebody. At this point, once we do that, once we kind of engage in the process and we have respondents, I think it's fair to say it's off the table. He can respond if he wants. If all of a sudden he determines he comes up with that dollar figure, he can respond again, and the board can take another gander at him. So he's free to compete with everybody else, but we need to open it back up.
Okay.
Through the chair, for clarification, the board can offer a TIF, but what you're going towards is funding. They receive extra funding? Or
Well, the board cannot issue a TIF for a housing
for
project.
house, that's what it is, okay.
What the board has done in the past have been, like for B&B manufacturing, prime example, they received a TIF. They had hiring goals,
Jobs.
that they, in jobs that they had to meet. Housing is what we're not allowed to do.
Gateway cities.
Gateway cities can. That's the distinction. So what we want to do is be able to allow the board, through state law, state policy, to be able to have those conversations. So if the board felt that that was value to town, that, in lieu of not being paid 100% fair, assessed value, the tax would be, you'll be able to make those arrangements following state guidelines. But we're not permitted to do it because we're too small of a community. We're not a gateway city. However, if you look at us regionally, if you look at North Adams, Clarksburg, Cheshire, and you take all that population in, now we can. And that's what some of the conversation is happening.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just had a couple of comments and questions. I think one problem recently has been the interest rates. In order to get up and running, you have to put a lot of money forward, and I think banks became a little shy with that unless they really knew the person they were dealing with in their credentials. So I think that was one big problem. It's perplexing to me because we hear all the time in news reports and newspapers, and there's a shortage of available housing. I mean, Member Duval brings it up often about General Dynamics.
Yeah.
So where and why do we fall short? Why won't people take that into consideration and take a chance here? Once again, whatever happened to the gentleman there that was gonna do the Hoosick Mill over?
Yep.
I mean, he came with a flurry, and you know, I know now he's headstrong into his,
Eagle.
ego, right, right. And, you know, and the longer these buildings stay unused, the worse condition they get into, you know? And another thing that I bring up, and it's a truism, is that a lot of people look for the education if they're gonna relocate. And, you know, I think there needs to be a team approach to, you know, development with just not getting the developer, but other people involved to answer questions that they may have that would make it more feasible for someone to come in and to do some type of development. But, and the last thing I'd like to say is, I don't know if you're allowed through bidding, but can you make sure the other gentleman that was interested knows about it anyways?
He does.
Yeah, he seemed like a real go-getter.
He does.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, that's all I have.
Yeah, and Joe, I'll just answer your question, you know, very quickly. I think it's important, you know, for people who are sitting at home or anybody here, you know, wondering that, read very carefully when you read the newspaper articles, and I've learned to do this. Ask yourself how it's being funded and through what state program. And I think very quickly, one of the answers I can give you is some of these folks have used a program called LIHTC. That's called Low Income Funding Source, which means the property becomes available for very low income folks and becomes available through the Section 8 voucher program.
Right.
So a community has made a choice to allow that type of housing in their community, and therefore that developer gets not kickbacks, but incentivized payments for building that type of development project in a community. And that's a policy choice that the board has to make, and I believe it's been, you know, made, that that's the type of housing we don't need anymore. We have that here. We have that accessibility for that part of our demographic. What we need in order to spark that tax base growth, that economic development growth, is the folks with that disposable income to come in and you watch Park Street and Summer Street, you know, begin to develop. The reason why the folks that own Eagle Mill haven't developed this is because their last proposal was a very high number of low-income units so that they could get money back as a development fee, but the town wouldn't recognize the economic benefits that a project of that size with those number of units could give us based on the demographic. It has to be mixed income.
Yeah, I think that we had hashed that out pretty well with him.
Yes.
That we
Yes.
thought that that's what it needed.
Yeah, and every now and then he comes knocking and we
Yeah.
say, that hasn't changed.
Yeah.
But they have moved forward, just to shift gears about who's it, they have moved forward with 5. They have a pretty good plan for 5, market rate using the 40R program. We haven't seen anything in writing, they haven't applied for anything, but they are still involved and they are still in communication. Never fast enough for us,
Yeah.
but, you know, as I've said before, with other projects like the Glen, let's wait and do it right, you know?
Well, I'm still waiting for that $1 million he said he was gonna give the town at that meeting. So he come running up, I'll give you guys $1 million. But don't hold your hand on, you know what, waiting for that.
Yeah, we haven't opened the bank account for it.
Yeah.
Other questions about Adams Memorial Building or the RFP?
So we'll just need a vote to go ahead and reissue that, and we'll get that out.
So we need a motion to reissue the RFP.
I'll make a motion the board reissue the RFP, request for proposal, for Memorial, well, would it be for
30
Memorial
30
School?
Columbia Street.
Right, 30 Columbia Street.
There you go.
Okay, I have a motion by Rick. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by John. Any further discussion?
Just one clarification
Sure.
with Rick's amendment. Could he put in housing development so people know that it's not, you know, for, I don't know, truck stops or whatever,
That's fine.
if you would.
Do you want to amend
Okay,
it?
so amended.
Okay,
Agree.
You.
and also seconded. Any other discussion on the amended motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed or an abstention?
Madam Chair, I just have a request that on the agenda in the near future, that we have a discussion in regards to the community center located at the same building. It's been a while since we've had a discussion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Or your checkbook.
Yeah.
So, Item F, discussion on the future of Adams Agricultural Fairgrounds. So I know it was brought up at our last meeting, that there was discussion out there, and since then, we have received an email.
Yes. So member Novak had brought that up, and that same day that it was brought up through Joe's channels, we did receive communication. We have no formal letter or anything indicating that they are dissolving and turning over the facility. However, for all due intents purposes, the email communications have indicated as such. So at this point, I think it's fair to say to the board, the fairgrounds property will be turned back over to the full care, custody, and control of the town of Adams. By the end of December 31st is the day that they've, in the email communication saying we haven't been able to obtain keys or access to the property. I don't necessarily think that's a big issue, but we will need access to get into the buildings, that type of thing. There's no action that's needed tonight by the board, but I did want to, we submitted in your materials, and you've seen this before. This was the original lease from 2011 that was supposed to go through 2036. There's no exact termination. There's some termination language in here, but the one that's probably most applicable is if you look under eighth, which is the third page titled eighth default termination. If you look at item E, it says, if an agricultural fair is not held on leased property for 2 successive years, and essentially the property comes back to us, they're turning it in. There's no reason to hold them, to the fire for it. So we're getting the property back, and I think I just wanted to have a brief conversation with the board tonight about what our next steps are with it. We have a lot of maintenance obligations in the town of Adams between Graylock Glen, our fields. We're trying to put more effort into those fields because they're heavily used. Graylock Glen needs attention, the walking trails needs attention, etc. So I think in the future, we'll have another kind of a brainstorming meeting. I've asked the Community Development Department just to maybe, throw some ideas together. Donna and I happened to be, talking today about this, and she thought it might even be beneficial to go ahead and hire a consultant for form of money and have what's called a public charrette, which would be an opportunity for people to come in and tell us what they think the property could be used for. We could do an RFI, request for inquiries. I think that's essentially people would pitch to us and say, I'd really like access to this property, and this is what I would do with it. We don't know what ideas are out there, so I think we need to make it known that the property is available, that we have, we're open-minded about it, and see maybe if the property goes into the hands again of another private group that could do something with it that would alleviate the taxpayer from the burden of maintaining it and investing into the capital infrastructure. There's several buildings on there that we haven't had to worry about. All we've done pursuant to this lease is mow it. We've dropped some stone for the driveway. That's about it. The fair folks have maintained it all consistent with the terms of the lease, but there's some infrastructure on there. So that's all. I just wanted to do that tonight. Again, no action needed, but think through what you folks may, what approach you may want to take. We'll have Eamon, put together a menu for you maybe at some point and say these are your options, but just wanted to get it out there tonight and get the buzz going that property will be available.
So just in regards to the lease, the Board of Selectmen signed a lease several years ago, so now that lease is going to come to an end. So
Yes.
the board needs to vote to accept that ending, or does the legal counsel, how's this going to work, that this lease is no longer valid? Because unless we vote to accept that.
That's not a terrible idea, John. You could certainly vote tonight to accept the fact that Adams Fairgrounds is turning the property back over to us. That's why I was kind
That
of,
ends the lease.
it ends the lease.
Right.
Yes. You could, if you wanted to, you could actually force the end of the lease by that item E that says, because there hasn't been an agricultural fair held on the property for 2 successive years. They've had other events, but they haven't been the traditional agricultural fair.
And that group no longer exists, right?
That is
Fair
our,
committee?
that's our understanding. Bree, do you want to add any color to that, or?
The communication has been a bit choppy. Like Jay mentioned, I've yet to receive any official letter. My most recent communication with them, I've had a number of follow-up questions that I asked, but It does sound like they are working with legal counsel in order to dissolve their 501c3 as a whole.
It would be nice to get a letter from the attorney saying that they're essentially turning in the keys, and we haven't gotten that yet.
Yeah, I'd like to see that too before we would vote on it, I would think.
We can certainly give it more time. There's no, it's just really an update tonight.
And we're going to have to take care of that property anyways, right,
We will.
for a period of time, or could be for longer, depending on what is the final decision is, but.
Yes, it would be nice, I think for spring, and I think we can handle the lawn mowing, fairly easily. It's just any other maintenance that has to be done over there. We're pretty well inventoried up, particularly with the outdoor center coming online up there.
Out of curiosity, condition of the field, is it in good enough condition to make, use as temporary practice fields?
I don't know.
That was, well, I just comment, that was tried, but underneath, that field was composed of a lot of concrete when, years and years ago, when it was kind of a waste dump for when they did projects in town. So the understory, there's a lot of rocks that come up, So I don't know about, it's a possibility. That field next to it, across the way there, that'd be the field to really try to harness if you could. But I'll comment quite a bit more on this when the time comes, but that field was made for agricultural fairs. That's the way the layout is. And perhaps in time we could get, people interested in farming and, make that some type of, example for farming and that type of thing, because you have the barns, if we could get that other field, you'd have pasture for, like something like a Shaker Village type thing, but, because, that fair was the only place where kids could come and see livestock, animals, and, the kids love that stuff, just like they like to train, and in order for them to get there, they have to have their parents or grandparents or somebody bring them there. So, I think that's down the road, but I personally want to say, I don't want to see it when and if it's turned over to be a catch-all for the DPW to bring down all their equipment, put them in the barns and,
No, we wouldn't do that.
okay, that's good.
See, I could have swore when I was younger, there was a baseball field there.
There was. There's an ice skating rink
There
back
was an
there
ice
too.
skating rink too.
Some of that structure is still back there, and there's that small park. I think what I really like to do, and winter may not necessarily be the exact time, but definitely before foliage season, is to go out there and really take a look at what the property boundaries are, so someone gets a good idea of exactly what, wouldn't it be nice to have not that we have the money to do it, but it'd be nice to have a ice skating rink again. I looked at it, it's gone, it's pretty well, filled in, but the shed is still back there, for it, so there's more property than just what was leased to the fairgrounds. There's that little playground that really doesn't, it'd be nice to get a good inventory and say, all of this is available, give us your ideas as to what to do with it.
Through the chair, I was wondering if we could, at some point, prior to having a discussion that the board has access to the field and walks the field.
Sure.
The town administrator, and then we can start discussing
Yes,
future.
yeah, we haven't, the only time that we've ever really used it was for our outdoor town meetings. I've never been there with the idea that we're gonna take it over and be responsible for this, so it would be good to go out there and actually kind of take an inventory of what's on that property.
Okay. Thank you. All right. G, update on Greylock Glen.
Final year update for Greylock Glen. We've had a lot of movement lately on it, so I'll briefly give everybody an overview of what's been happening. Focusing on the outdoor center. The request for proposals for the restaurant and cafe is out. It has been out. We did a walk around with potential interested parties on site a couple weeks ago. There were maybe 3 or 4 groups that walked around with us. Couple local, couple from outside the area. Can't tell you if they're going to bid or not. Don't know. Don't know if there's other people out there interested in it. That will be due January 25th, and then that'll be the normal RFP process where we assess the respondents to make sure that they meet all the criteria for the RFP, and then assess it, and then present to the board who the options are. That will all depend on how many, qualified respondents there are to it. So that's January 25th. Mass Audubon was the only respondent to the RFP for the educational center. Please don't hold me to the date, but we are targeting our next meeting in January, January 3rd, to have Mass Audubon here. I've asked Donna to have the recommendation letter prepared for you, as well as all the materials several days in advance of that meeting, perhaps for next week. I'll be on vacation next week, but I'll be working from home periodically. We'll make sure we get it to you, so you can look at it. They are the only respondent, but we would like a decision. We'd like to present them to you on January 3rd to make the formal choice to have them as the selected operator for the educational wing. Also on January 3rd, most definitely do not hold me to this date, but we also anticipate that night to have the board review the development agreement with Shared Estates Fund for development of the campground. It has taken a lot of time to develop this agreement. It has been back and forth between lawyers and honing it all in, and as frankly was a lot more complicated and a lot more work than we had anticipated, in between vacations and travel season, et cetera. So I would anticipate that on January 3rd, likely in executive session, the board will have the opportunity with our lawyer present and their lawyer present as well, go through it, ask any questions. We'll go through it very carefully. I mean, it's a rather long document, but we'll have Attorney Saban give you the highlights, allow you to ask any questions, et cetera. And then if the board is happy with what they hear that night, I would anticipate we come out of executive session and the board approve it at open session. What that will do is will then allow Shared Estates to begin fundraising once they completed all their SEC filings, and they have been doing that all along. Our lawyer has been just tracking that with their lawyer as well, and I had a conversation with Daniel last week, I believe, or so. They remain interested in the project, very interested in the project. None of that has changed. But getting the development agreement done will then allow them to begin design and engineering. Everything that we saw last December, January is proposed. That is what they used to essentially come into the town of Adams and say, please choose us. Well, we did that. Now we sat down with them. We came up with our development agreement. Who's going to be responsible for what, when, how, et cetera. As well as things that were not pleasant to talk about, which is what happens if you're not able to finish your project, what happens if you're not able to raise enough money. We had to go through all of that. That is an exercise I really don't ever want to go through again or hope happens, but we had to do it to do our due diligence. So once we come up with the development agreement, that will then allow them to unlock some of their funds that they have and begin design and engineering, which I know our trail users are interested in, our snowmobile users are interested in, we're interested in. And then once they develop all those designs and plans, that they will come back in front of the board with those. The board will approve that final plan. And then as long as the board is happy with that, and that is consistent on what the vision has been for that property up there, then we'll go through what's left of the permitting process. They fundraise, and then they put a shovel in the ground. So this will be a big watershed moment for us. We anticipate doing that on January 3rd. So that's for the 3rd. We have received, Bree, what was the total number of applications for executive director?
Gosh, I believe it was 11 or 12.
I want to say it was a dozen applications. We did a lot of screening. We got that down to a first interview group of 6, all who met at least minimum qualifications to be interviewed for the job. First round brought that down to 4. And we're now in the process of interviewing a second round 4 people, and we hope to whittle that down. I can tell you this will probably be one of the hardest hiring decisions any of us have had to make. It's just Donna and I and Crystal doing the interviews. Any of these people could probably do the job, but it was a great applicant pool. We are very grateful that there were folks out there that see the value in what this job is, what that property is, and what the town's master plan is. So good problems to have, but time consuming and stressful. We want to make sure we hire the right person, so we're taking our time. So that's where we are with that. I would anticipate a decision being made just after the new year, and probably maybe around the 17th of January, depending upon who that final candidate is. so they can give adequate notice, et cetera, to their current employer. I would anticipate late January, you folks having that ratification in front of you for it. We want to get the executive director on board sometime in late January, early February, so that they can hire the superintendent of buildings and grounds. They can begin to participate with the cafe restaurant RFP and really get in on the ground floor of putting life in that building. That's our plan for it. So that's the executive director. Getting back to the outdoor center building itself, Amanda and her team are inside, Mike's inside. They're sheet rocking, they're mudding up there. They're framing out the rooms. Mechanical installation is still going on. Plumbing installation is still going on. They have heat inside the building now, temporary heat set up, so they'll be in there for the majority of the winter, finishing it out. And then lastly, the water system work. Two main components of equipment is left. The SCADA equipment, which is system control and analysis. Thank you, Howard, my engineer over there, one of my engineers. That equipment needs to be installed into the pump house, which can talk back to the fire district system, so we know pressure, flow, all that stuff. We don't have that equipment yet. And then, of course, the biggest item is the water tank. Water tank, which will supply all the fire suppression water to the facility, not just the outdoor center, but the entire complex. And that is custom made. So they're fabricating that off-site and then have to bring it in. And it's just a slow process. We're trying to, depends on how Amanda and Mike are able to work the building. But, as materials and weather and everything have delayed them a little bit on the building, it's getting closer to when the the water tank will be ready. So I'm not putting out any dates or anything. I'm just going to say, I think summer of 2024 is going to be a really great time for the town of Adams. That's my Greylock Glen update.
Thanks, Jay. Any questions for Jay on this update?
Just a couple.
Sure.
I was surprised that I like to walk up there. When I went up, the tank is up.
Part of it's up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean-
the base of it is, yeah.
Not the base, the whole tank is up.
Yeah, it's not all of it.
Well, I was very surprised. I didn't hear nothing of it, and it kind of surprised me because I wasn't made known how that was moving along. And as far as like this campground, we're coming January 3rd and we might sign it, but I don't know. I think that people should give another chance to give their views. It's been so long since, we've heard about it. And I don't want to go in and, do this and people say, oh, there they go. They just ran over us and we didn't get a chance to, make any comments on it. We did it once, but that was quite some time ago. I mean, I'm just saying that because I don't want people to say, oh, here we go, they cram this down our throat. That's all I'm saying.
Sure, and I have two comments for that. Number one, Joe, I think frankly, no matter what we do, there'll be a very small segment that will say it anyway. But also, number two, there's nothing to provide public input on yet. The same plan that was proposed last December that the folks heard about in March
Yeah.
is still sitting on the shelf. The development agreement doesn't say you build 3 homes that are in green with hot water. It doesn't say that.
Right.
It says you have X amount of time to build this. You have X amount of time to do this. You are required to do this. It is a legal document. We can't get to another opportunity for public to come in and say, boy, I like that, until the development agreement is signed and Daniel and his team is actually able to design it. And that was a mistake that I feel we made as staff back in December, is we got way too excited about having 2 qualified people to do the campground, and there was too much time from the visioning sessions that took place in 2010, 11, and 12. Donna is adamant, and I have no reason, I wasn't here, we had all that public input, and this is the decision that was made. So what we're focusing in on now is exactly what it's going to look like, and we have to get to that point. So that's why you heard me say, and I'm happy to remind everybody for it, there will be another opportunity when Daniel and his team come up with that design. This is what it's going to look like. We will make sure this time around, we say, okay, here we go. And I think he'll be happy to have another public input session on it, because I know he wants to incorporate some of that feedback he received back in March.
Yeah.
We're just not there yet.
Yeah, okay, well, that's good, but something you just alluded to that kind of bothers me is that if we give them the okay, then they're gonna start fundraising. I took for granted that, they had the funds
No.
to start it.
No, that's by no means how this works.
Okay.
Not at all.
Okay.
Because they technically don't have legal right to do anything up there yet.
Yeah, but I mean, to fundraise, that means they, once they get the okay, they, until they get all the permit and stuff, that, there'll be fundraising. I thought, that they were a group that, had a clientele and a following that had the money on hand to
Well,
do the job.
they may, but I
Okay.
don't think, this is a world that's kind of new to all of us, but it's certainly a window that I've been learning about. And if I have X amount of dollars that I'm going to invest in something like that, I've learned those folks aren't going to hand that over until there's a document that says we're good to go. And they don't have that yet. That's what that development agreement is. So we're there for it. And we recognize, that opportunity that folks may not have gotten the last time around, and we'll work with Daniel to make sure that it happens. But at the end of the day, I also want to be sure that people understand this isn't anything new. This is being built consistent with what was visioned and approved by the town in 2010, 2012 range. It's just taken us 10 years plus to get a developer with the money to do it.
Yep.
Well, we hope
Okay,
the money to do it,
just-
so.
Just questions that I
Sure.
know people will be asking.
Yeah, and rightly so.
That's all I have right now.
Anyone else?
Again, for clarification, the discussion we had was that they'd be looking for investors. So fundraising, but that's one way of doing things. Maybe they're going to do both, but the way they obtain the financing is going to be through investors. Right?
Yep, and
So we like
commercial
both.
lending.
Right,
And commercial.
commercial lending, okay.
Yep.
All right,
Our goal as a town is simply to make sure they have the ability to do it. And then, so and you'll hear about this on January 3rd. I mean, this is a world this is the town of Adams has never had a project like this before. With a project, $15 million on public property. So we're the leaseholder with a 99-year lease with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We've had to make sure that our development agreement with the shared estates folks is in alignment with our lease with the state. And we used to have Don Dupendorf as an attorney, if you remember. Well, Don retired. So he had all that institutional knowledge with him. So when we hired our new attorney, Attorney Sabin, Jay had to come up, his name's Jay too, two of us in the world, surprisingly. He had to come up and learn all of that institutional history. He had to talk to Don. So he had to come up with all of that, and that's what makes it complicated. So some of those conditions are in there regarding financing. But I know that Daniel told me, I don't want to speak out of turn, but, he told me there's a lot of enthusiasm and interest in the project. He does not necessarily think, he's knocking on wood, he's hopeful, but he's just as optimistic as he was in March that there'll be ample investors in the project.
Okay. Thank you. All right, that brings us to subcommittee and liaison reports. Rick?
No.
Joe?
Just a few things.
Sure.
I was asked to be the chairman of the Budget and Finance Committee of the Mohawk Woodlands Partnership. I took it on, and I'm hoping that we can get something going. So that's that. And I have a question, probably best served going to Jay. I saw that fair share amendment where we got some money,
Yeah.
which was good. But what kind of, how does that formula work? I read all about the votes and then the $1 million once you get over that, but
Yeah.
I see like New Marlboro, small community, 223,334. Sheffield, 223,494. Sandusfield, $215,178. So how does that formula work where those small communities could get that type of money?
That was a Chapter 90 disposition for those communities. They must have more road mileage than we do.
I think we-
That would be my guess. I didn't necessarily look at the other communities, because
Yeah.
usually when I do, I get disappointed.
Right.
But that is my guess.
Okay.
Is that they have more road mileage. Because if you look at those two formulas, and it's important that people understand this too, we have,
Because you could have used it for education also, right?
no, the legislation says the legislature either does it for education or infrastructure.
Right.
But that money is being funneled through pre-existing programs. We have no say in that. They just, the state, when I say they, the state, said for infrastructure, put it to Chapter 90 to give it to the communities. The only difference this time around rather than a regular Chapter 90 allotment, which is a formula based on, it's an old formula, road mileage, population, percentage of your population that works in your community. So we're disadvantaged because our road mileage has always stayed the same, but our population has dropped and the percentage of people that actually work in Adams has dropped. So if you look at the spreadsheet with the link, if you clicked on the link I sent you, and you look at that, there's two disbursements.
Right.
90 and 70, using round numbers. The 90 is the one that just gave us based on our road mileage. The lesser number is the one that was weighted more heavily with the population and the work, in town item, which is why we're also, small towns are having these communications with Senator Mark and other people about changing that formula permanently or finding another mechanism to get us money for our roads. So how they do it, Joe, in terms of education, I don't know. That might be through the Chapter 70 program or the special ed circuit breaker, I don't know.
Because when you hear fair share, I mean, I would think that population would play a big part of a fair share.
Yeah, well, I think fair share is referencing to the people who trigger paying the extra income tax
Right,
because
yes, right.
their income is more. I think
More,
that's
right.
what that doesn't necessarily mean Adams is going to get its
kind
fair
of
share.
floored me, like population-wise, I mean, those are three of the smaller communities.
That's the only thing I could think of.
Yeah,
is
right,
the
I
fact
don't
that they
know,
have
that's
more
why I
road
would just
mileage. Yeah.
ask you, I wasn't
Yeah.
sure why they got appropriated so much
Yeah.
more money.
And also, again, for folks sitting at home, it's important to know this. In fact, Member Duval mentioned it a couple meetings ago, is people would be surprised here in town at the number of roads that we just assume are accepted as public ways or not. That hurts us.
Yeah.
Developments, I won't name them, but there's still a couple developments here in town where we plow and we're putting asphalt down, but we don't own the road. They're still owned by the developer. That hurts us because we can't check mark that road mileage as part of Chapter 90. So we really have to, as time permits, have to make a concerted effort to do that inventory and work with legal counsel to take whatever necessary steps are to accept those roads. So we can boost that road mileage up, so we get every nickel we can get out of the state.
Yeah, right, that's been an ongoing discussion for years and years about accepted roads and unaccepted roads. I guess that's all I have for what I was gonna say.
Thanks, Joe.
Nothing from me.
John?
Just quickly, we just had a BRPC Finance Committee meeting, and we reviewed the results of an audit similar to what we have done here in the town. Everything was very good, so that's all I have.
Excellent, thank you. I attended the presentation by National Grid on the asset condition refurbishment project. That was the public session that was held on December 7th. And I made sure community development put information in everybody's mailboxes. Takeaways really is that the schedule for the work, so you'll see that the scope of work and the project overview is in that packet, but the schedule for that work would start in August of 2024 in Vermont. And then continue to Adams, ending in August of 2027. So we probably might not see that 2 miles of work that's happening in Adams until the tail end of that schedule. So they'll have more public information sessions. They'll make themselves available. There is some approvals that will be needed by some of our boards here in town. So there's more on this to come. So I just wanted to make sure you all had that. And if there is any information about outages, a schedule of that, they would be notifying us, because that was a lot of the conversation when they presented was outages.
Yeah.
So they would make sure that it would be limited and when that would be scheduled.
Yeah,
So,
I was
wanted
just
to make sure.
wondering, Christine, did they say anything about the buildings where the transformers are, if they're gonna update them? Because that seems where all the problem is, the transformers, they seem, they start on fire, they're really old type. And do you know if they're going to do anything like at our station down there where, the transformers are and everything? If they do all that other work and they don't have, an updated, for that type of thing, I was just wondering if they said anything about it. And I'm glad that you did. I had one question, and I kind of looked and I couldn't tell where the Hoosick Tunnel and how close the lines are, because I worry if, you know, they have to do some blasting and digging and stuff, that there's no problem with collapse, you know, it's in there because it's a fragile tunnel, as you probably well know.
But West End is weaker than the east, and the
Yep.
West End already collapsed.
Yep, right.
They were in there a couple of years ago reassuring it. You want me to answer? I can answer that.
So I was just going to say that they talked a lot about actually the pole structures as
Yeah.
part of this presentation, but there was a little bit of conversation. I think that they were going to come back and talk to us a little bit more about the transformer station itself, and I think that they will have plans. It's just not part of this project,
I think
what they talked about.
I think they're doing a feasibility study on it, Joe, to determine if it should stay there or if it should be moved.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's, if people are interested, I mean, it's fascinating history. That's there because the original street railway trolley barn was there. The reason why that section of town's called Xylonite is because the first industry there was American Xylonite Plastic Company, was there. And then also that electrical substation powered portions of the Hoosick Tunnel electrical system, not just even during construction, but when it was electrified with electrified locomotives. There's a lot of history there, but that area is very wet.
Yeah.
And I think National Grid's, they have updated it, upgraded it, which is one of the reasons why we don't see as many, even just in my 5 years here, coming up on 5, we haven't seen as many power outages as we did. That's a very critical piece of infrastructure, but I think they're looking at it to say, should they stay there or move it?
Okay, good.
Announcements and go to the order. Rick?
The only announcement, would be, as this is our last meeting for this year, just like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year, and all that stuff.
Thanks, Rick.
Yeah, I would like to echo what Rick just said. Wish everybody a very joyous holiday season, and I say this quite often, make sure you tell the people that you love them, because life is fragile. And I hope, as a board, I'm wishing all my members a happy holiday season, and I hope that our upcoming year can be constructive and financially appealing.
Excellent. Thanks, Joe. Howard, anything?
Yes, I echo those comments, wish everybody a joyous and happy holidays. And I'm grateful for this town and all that's happening in the town. I look forward to a very prosperous next year and prosperity building after that.
Thanks, Howard. John?
It's been well said, I'm good, nothing to add.
Okay. Well, I'll continue on the holiday message, and I will once again thank the people in town who have made our town look so festive with all of their holiday decorations. So thank you to everyone who either participated in the holiday home decorating contest or have just decorated, because it really does look festive, and I have heard from people throughout the county who have said how wonderful Adams looks. So we have a lot of families to thank for that. And if you do happen to be in any of our town buildings, please take a look at their festive decorations. I know that there was also a contest among town staff for door decorating, but that extended far past town hall. So if you are at the library, if you go over by wastewater treatment plant, I do believe the Council on Aging did decorate, maybe not part of a contest, but they did as well. And
Police department lobby.
And the police department lobby is quite decorated as well. So please go visit some of our town staff and wish them a happy holiday as well. And
And don't leave a floor unvisited in town hall.
all 4 floors should
Is
be
it-
visited
Yes.
in town hall. So even before you leave this evening, if you haven't seen some of the doors, I would encourage you
And I
to
hear
do
the
so.
third floor is the rock star, right?
We are not saying which floor. It's not a competition. I just wanted to thank everyone, so.
Okay.
They were very creative.
Yep. But yes, so our next meeting, as everyone has mentioned, will be in the new year. It'll be Wednesday, January 3rd at 6 PM. So have a wonderful holiday, and I'll see you all in the new year. So, thanks. Oh, with that, I needed a motion to adjourn. Come on, Rick.
Motion adjourned.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.